Hi everyone, it's Jen. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I thought I'd come on with a little tutorial on how to turn these jumbo craft hearts from the Dollar Tree into a nice decor piece. I showed these on my haul this week, and my idea was to copy the Easter eggs that I had made last year, and I don't have one around. They're packed away in my Easter decorations, but I'll link the video down below that shows how I covered the Easter eggs that are in the same kind of foam with fabric for decor. Those are much smaller. This is the first time I've seen this jumbo craft heart at the Dollar Tree, so I picked up 2 of them, and I was hoping I'd be able to do fabric covered hearts, and I did make one. I think it came out really cute, so I thought I would show you my process on the second one that I picked up. So let me show you the first one that I made. And this is how it came out. I think it's really, really pretty. I plan to put this on my hutch, just kind of like as a background piece in my Valentine decor. So what I did was I took 2 pieces of fabric and covered each side with one of them. And then I took some trim and wrapped it around to cover up the seam. And then I added a button pin, and then I tied a piece of ribbon and glued that to the button just to make, add a little embellishment to it. If you wanted to make this a hanging piece of decor, you could add a ribbon or some kind of, loop here to hang it. But since mine is just going to be for decor without hanging onto anything, I left the loop out. So yeah, it's super cute. Let me measure it for you before we get started. This turns out to be, let's see, it's about almost 7 inches top to bottom, and then 7.5 inches side to side. So a really nice size decoration, I think. All right, so let's get started, and I'll tell you everything you need to make this. So obviously you need a jumbo craft heart. If you find the, other shapes and sizes, whatever, you can use this technique on any of the shapes, but I'm going to just show it to you with the heart. You're going to need 2 pieces of fabric. If you have fat quarters, like from the Dollar Tree or any other kind of fabric shop, those would be perfect for these. I have this pack of 10-inch squares. I'm a quilter, so I have a lot of fabric in my stash. So this is the perfect size. I think. I didn't use this on the first one, but I think it'll work out nicely for this project. So I picked out 2 fabrics from that. I'm going to be using this like checkered one with the hearts on it, and then a coordinating floral print with butterflies and gold dots. It does not have to be high quality fabric that you use. In fact, the thinner the better, because it's easier to fold and tuck into the heart itself. So use thin fabric if you can. And let's see, you're going to need some scissors. If you have fabric scissors, that's great. I actually used my fabric scissors and some smaller scissors too for the fine cuts. You're going to need an X-Acto knife. So I have one here. I had one from the Dollar Tree, but I can't find it. So I've been using this one. I've had this one for years and years, and the blade keeps coming loose, so I have to twist it back in as I'm using it. But that's what I have, so that's what I'm going to use. And then some trims and pins and stuff. We'll get to that at the end, okay? So let's get started with this. I'm just going to move my tools over and open up my heart. Okay, so my heart is opened, and we're going to start with 1 piece of the fabric. So you want to make sure when you cut your fabric, if you use a bigger piece of fabric and you cut it down to size, just make sure that, see the seam there along the foam heart? Just make sure it covers up that seam, okay, on all different sides. So that way you'll be able to tuck it in, okay? So this size should be good. All right, now here's where you're going to take your X-Acto knife. Please be careful. These are very sharp. And then you're going to cut a line right through the seam all the way around, and that's where you're going to tuck your fabric into. So you're going to cut, I would say, about at least 1/4 of an inch down into your seam, okay? And the process that I use is mostly just sawing back and forth. And if you get a piece that pops out like that, it's no big deal. Just take it out. But try to do it in as smooth a seam as you can. And you want to use this kind of foam, not like the like other kind of styrofoam that is looser. You want it nice and tight, dense foam like this. I've tried it with the looser foam, styrofoam, and it just doesn't work as well. I tried it with the eggs that I did last year. So I'm just going to go around and cut a line all the way around. And I'll be right back when I'm done with that. You don't need to watch that whole process, but I'm just going to be going all around. Okay, be right back. Okay, I went all around the seam twice just to make sure I got it all. And yeah, I went in like about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch all the way around. So there's a nice slit there that you will be tucking both pieces of your fabric into, one on one side, one on the other. All right, so you're going to take your piece of fabric. Again, this is about a 10-inch square. I think it should be fine for this project. I'm going to start tucking it in before I cut it more of a heart shape, just so I'm sure that it'll fit. So just cover it on top of your heart. If it's a directional print like mine, make sure that it's facing the right way. This one goes up and down and across, so I have it kind of the way I want it. So you're going to take your X-Acto knife again, and then you're going to use this to tuck in the edges of your fabric into the seam. So I like to start at the top of, or at like the round part of one of the sides of the heart. So just go ahead, feel where your seam is, or take a peek, and take your X-Acto knife and push it in. All right, it's not gonna cut it if you just use like a pushing motion like that, okay? So you're gonna keep going around and push it in. And then as you're doing that, just kind of, you know, smooth it around, make sure that it's still covering the seam on the other side, okay? If you make a mistake and you realize that it's not like going in correctly, you could always pop it out and start again, because you're not cutting it, you're just tucking it in. I was going to try a pokey tool, see if that worked too. Let's see. This is a pokey tool that I made a while ago. It's always nice to have another use for a pokey tool, right? Yeah, it works okay. It's working. But I think I'm going to go with the X-Acto knife. I'm used to that. But if you don't have an X-Acto knife, well, I guess if you use something else to cut the seam of your styrofoam, go ahead and use your pokey tool to push it in. All right, so I have one of the sides done, right? So now I'm down at the bottom, and you got to fold it a little bit because it's going around a curve, but that's okay. Just fold it down and push in the fold, okay? And once you're all done, you can go and fine tune it and poke in some more of the holes. But I just did that at the curve, see? And then, let's see. It's still looking pretty good over here. So I'm going to keep going. And I'll show you how to go around the curves at the top of the heart too. But the straight part is the easiest, so that's where I start. Still going, yeah, okay. And then kind of pull it tight as you go too. It'll just make it easier at the end to fine tune if if it's nice and taut. Okay. So yeah, see, that's right where the fabric ends. So it's a perfect size actually, this 10-inch square. Okay, this is a curve. There we go. So that's how it's looking so far. You see there are some folds there. Don't panic, we'll fix that later. When I was doing the first one, I had to take the fabric out several times and start over just because it wasn't lining up correctly. So if you have to do that, don't worry about it. Just keep trying. And then you're going to get to a point where you're like, oh, this is not going to look good. But then just keep going, and like magic, it starts looking good. Okay, so what I'm doing here is, this is the curve of the heart here. So there's got to be a lot of little folds going on here, okay? So you just got to take your fabric and just kind of fold it a little bit and tuck the folds into the seam. So let me zoom in so you can see. Okay. So see how there's a fold there? I'm just tucking that in. Because it's rounded, you know, it's not going to be perfect, but that's what fabric does. You know, it folds a little bit at curves. There's nothing wrong with that. It makes it look kind of pillow-like, I think. Okay, now here I'm pulling it tighter. And when you get to the inside of the heart, that's the trickiest part, I find. So we're going to do some cutting in a second once I get this part tucked in. Okay, I think it's time to do some cutting because you have all this extra fabric, see, and that's the center of the heart. So we're going to have to cut like a V shape out here. You don't want to go too crazy cutting it out, but remember we're adding trim, so that can cover up any mistakes that you made. So here I'm just going to go ahead and cut a V, give it a little bit of extra, you know, a seam allowance sort of. Not cutting too close to the heart itself. So cut that out. See, now there's like a V that you can press into the middle there. So I'm going to keep going with my X-Acto knife, and I cut that a little bit too close, didn't I? Well, let's see what happens. Okay, I'm going to just keep pulling it tight so there's enough to push into the seam. Be fine. And you know, it does take a little bit of pulling and pushing and wrestling, but that's okay. It's fun. It's actually very fun to do. So there we go. We have part of the heart done. Now let's go over to the other side, and we're gonna just leave this center here free for a minute and then just go ahead and do the outside of the heart. Oops. And then meet in the middle. So got our X-Acto knife. Remember, we're pulling, folding a little bit if you have to around a curve. Oops. Sometimes I realize I'm not right in the seam. If you notice it's not pushing in correctly, you're probably not at the seam. So just pull back your fabric a little and peek. Oops, sorry about that. And remember, be careful. Don't poke yourself with the knife. Do you have Band-Aids in your craft room? I do. I have a box of like sewing themed Band-Aids. Okay, going around the curve. And I'll keep this part in instead of fast forwarding, just so you could see that, you know, it does take a little finagling to go around the curves. And if you wanted to, like, make this not just one fabric, do different fabrics, you could do that too. And just cut, you know, score lines down the middle and maybe have like a two-tone heart if you wanted to do that. Like with the eggs, they have, I think it was 4 different fabrics. Oopsie, my knife blade comes out just by itself sometimes. It loosens. Okay, we're going along. Folding as we go, pulling taut, checking where the seam is. And yeah, I cut this V a little bit too deep. I should have left a little bit more fabric on it, but luckily it just fits into the seam if I pull it tight. And then, yeah, the trim covers up mistakes and the seam itself. So the trim is not just decorative, it's also strategically placed. All right, see how like that piece of the fabric doesn't quite make it into the seam? That's okay, because the trim will cover it up. All right, so most of it is covered. Actually, it is covered. So we have all this extra fabric, so I'm going to take my fabric shears that are really squeaky, sorry about that, and cut as close as I can, maybe even closer than that, to the heart. See, like that. And we're going to go around and tuck all the rest back in. So cut as much as you can once it's pressed into the seam, okay? Going around. I'm going to get my other scissors that aren't squeaky. Hold on. All right, I got my other scissors. I have 2 pairs of these because these are Ginger shears. They're a really good scissor brand, and I had lost one once and I couldn't find it for the longest time, so I had to buy another set, and then I eventually found them. But so I have one in one part of my craft room and one in the other. Oops. And yeah, I could oil those squeaky ones. Now that just popped out, so I'm going to go ahead and tuck that back in. And finish cutting. Remember, I'm lefty, so I'm probably doing it backwards. But you just cut with your right hand or whatever hand you use. All right, so I'm going to, since it's all trimmed, take my X-Acto knife and then just poke the excess into the seam. So there's all of the fabric ends are tucked in. See what I'm doing there? Just tuck, tuck, tuck. And I'll be right back once that's done. So that is all done. It's all tucked in. As you can see, it's not perfectly straight across, but that's okay. I don't mind. So we're going to do the same exact thing with the next piece of fabric. So just turn over your heart, put your fabric on. Now this will be easier to keep the pattern correct because it's not directional. So yeah, this is the same exact process as the first side. And you just tuck it into, I'll get you started and show you how to tuck it in with the other fabric there already. It's the same thing. It's they both meet together. So I'm just making sure my fabric is centered so there's room on both sides or all sides to be tucked in. All right, so I'm going to start at one of the straight ends and then just start poking it in. See? It's poked in along with the other one. And I'll just go to the curve and then I'll do it off camera and be back when it's all done. Just poke, poke, poke. Don't be shy. Use that X-Acto knife. And then fold it a little to go around the curve. Am I at the right place? No. See, that's why it was tough, because I wasn't exactly at the seam. So if you feel like it's not going in, you're probably not at the seam. Okay, so I'm just going to do this off camera and I'll be right back. Okay, I got to the point where I need to cut the V out of the fabric here. So I'm not going to cut it as deep as I did last time, and we'll see how that works out. So you could turn it over to follow the lines. I think that's a little bit of a more shallow cut. Okay. So back to tucking and folding, pressing. Oh, sorry, off camera. Pull and tuck. Now, if you press too hard with the tip of your X-Acto knife, it will cut your fabric. So just make sure you're kind of, doing it off center a little bit. And by that, I mean just like taking the blade, like, not like pressing deep into it, just kind of like on the side of the blade. Okay. Now, probably not right at the seam because it's not going in. This is definitely the trickiest part at the center of the heart. But if you just keep going, it eventually gets all tucked in nicely. And then adding the embellishment to the top also kind of hides any like fabric folding or gathering. You'll see what I mean. We'll add the trim and embellishment together. All right, now I'm gonna go and trim this. Oh, that's so pretty with that fabric. I love that one. Just using the edge of the heart as my guide for my scissors. Because remember, you have it mostly tucked in, so you don't need to leave any extra at this point. What a nice, like, cheap way to make some Valentine decor. Because if you get this, the heart at Dollar Tree, oops, look what I just did. I just cut a piece of that fabric. That's all right. Anything like that, I like as a challenge to fix. So yeah, we'll fix that in a second. But anyway, like I was saying, this is so cheap to make because you have the heart. You have 2 fat quarters if you need to buy some fabric, and those are $1.25 at Dollar Tree too. So what's that, $3.75 for this? And then just add some trim that you have. Most people have some sort of ribbon or trim in their stash that they can add to the edges. If not, just buy a roll of like rickrack at Walmart or something. Oops. So now what I'm doing is just tucking the excess in. I'm going to get some Fabri-Tac and glue that on. I did the same exact thing with my scissors on the first one. I cut into the fabric that was already on the heart. But yeah, whenever I make a mistake like that, it doesn't bother me too much if it's not, devastating, because I could always cover it up. That's what embellishments are for. Buttons, ribbon. I find that with, fabric projects, with paper crafting projects. It's just a challenge to figure out how to work with it, Like Bob Ross says, it's a happy accident. We don't make mistakes. Now see how there's like kind of a gap in the fabric here, or it's just kind of bunched up a little bit? We'll be able to kind of fix that a little bit with the pin that we use for an embellishment later too. So for now, I'm going to get out my Fabri-Tac. Fabri-Tac is a clear glue that works really well on fabric, so I recommend that to use for this next part of our project when we're gluing on trim. But I'm also going to put it here right under that cut that I made by mistake, and then just kind of smooth my fabric down over it, just so it doesn't fray anymore. And it'll just be our little secret. There's a little spot there too. Ta-da! Cute, right? Both sides are cute, but I think this will be my main side. So when I'm done, I'll put the embellishment on this side. All right, so let's think about what kind of trim we want to use for the edges. Let me show you a refresher of the one that I made before. This is a piece of trim that came on one of the Michaels trim bundles, and if you remember at like 4th of July, they had a 4th of July bundle. They've been coming out with different holiday ones. So yeah, this is from the 4th of July one that was all red, white, and blue. So you want to use a trim that goes around curves really nicely, like rickrack or something like this. Like a stiff grosgrain ribbon might not work that well because it doesn't go around corners really nicely like this does. So, you know, if you're not sure, just test it out, give it a dry run before you start gluing. So I picked out a few different ones from my stash because I have so much trim. I wanted to save a little bit of time, but I thought we could look at them together and decide which one will work. So I have some rickrack. Rickrack is great because it does go around corners nicely. So this was a piece from one of those Michaels bundles as well. This is one of the bigger rickracks, probably like, well, let's see, we'll measure it. 1/4 inch rickrack, 1/2 inch rickrack. Okay, so just give it a trial, put it on your border to see how it looks on both sides. And I think that looks very nice. So that's a contender for sure. We'll keep that to the side. I brought over some blue ones too because there's some blue in this fabric and I thought the blue would look nice on it. So let's see. Which side is which? They look the same, so that's good. So that looks really pretty, doesn't it? I do like that. So that's a contender too. Oh boy, this is going to be hard to narrow down. And then I found this one that's blue and white, so we could glue that on like this. Oh, that's cute too. Oh man. Now I don't know. We have to eliminate one of these. How about the pink? Let's see what pink looks like. Okay, the pink I do not love because it's a little bit too bright for the back. So good, got to eliminate one. And then there's this other blue one that's pretty, but I don't think it's quite wide enough. You could see the seam a little bit too much, so I'm not going to use that. I brought over another rickrack. This is a little bit smaller than the other one, and this is like an aqua color. And I think it's too thin and maybe a little bit too bright for these fabrics. So I won't use that. Here's the same cream one, but it's I think it's a little bit smaller than the other one. Is it, or is it the same? No, actually, I think they're about the same. Okay, never mind. So we have the ivory one, which is very pretty, but I'm thinking one of the blue ones might be nicer, a nice little pop-up color. See how nice and pliable this one is? Both of these go around curves really nicely. So this one's a little thicker, which is nice. Looks like a nice trim on there. But this one, let's see, we could put it this way or with the white part sticking up. Oh goodness, I don't know. I wish you guys would give me your advice. I think we'll go with this one because I like that white scallop and I like it this way too. Hopefully you guys approve. So that's what we're going to do. All right, so to start with, just make sure your piece goes around your heart. Okay, this is the way they come in the Michaels bundle, so I didn't have to trim it off or anything, and it works great. So we're going to start by gluing it to the top center. And you could either put Fabri-Tac on the heart itself or on the trim. And I like to put it on the trim. I just think it sticks a little bit better. Which way did I say we were going to do it? This way? No, the white pointing the other way. Okay, so this is going to be the bottom. So I'm going to take my Fabri-Tac. And I'm going to do it on the blue part. And then just run like, don't go crazy with it, otherwise it'll glob out the sides, and it really doesn't need too much. And just do like a manageable section at first, like that, okay? And then just hold it. Sorry, I have to move off camera a little bit. And press one end into to start, and I just overlap it a little bit. Oops, sorry. Overlap it at the center a little. So just start it like that. Oops, sorry guys. Like that. And make sure you cover up the seam with the part that you glued. And then just run it along the seam. Make sure it's nice and flat. And then when you get to the parts that you did not glue yet, just take your glue and add some more. Remember, don't go crazy. Just, oops, sorry, I'm totally off frame. Just a thin bead of glue. Look at that, covering up all those mistakes. Love it. See? Move that up a little here. Yeah. There. Okay, and looks like we stopped there with the glue. So we'll add some more. You know I love doing paper crafting, but I love my fabric too, and I have a large collection of fabric. So this is a great way to use it. And then just go around the curve, you just hold it like that. Press it down as you go. Look how pretty that looks. So if you're wondering what to do with your fabric stash or your trims, or you're just looking for something different to do that, you know, take you an hour, if that. And the fun part is picking out the different fabrics, you know, to match your decor or your project. This is so easy to go around the curves. And if you wanted to here, you could make a loop before you glue it down. But like I said, mine are not hanging projects. So, all right, so we're getting to the end here. So I'm gonna look where it overlaps a little and then just cut it off there before I glue it down. And then add the last bit of glue. Boy, that's close up, huh? And voila. So pretty, right? It's okay to have those folds. It's fabric, remember? Doesn't that look pretty? All right, let me wash this glue off my hands. I'll be right back. I got some of the glue off, but not all of it. So we're gonna finish up with putting the bow and the button on. So on the example one, this is a pin actually, and I've had these for a long time, but I think you could get them at Joann's. They're just regular sewing pins, and they have like button embellishments on the top, nice and flat. For this one, for this heart, I decided to go with a blue one, and then I picked out some ribbon that I'd gotten from I don't know, probably Walmart, the spool of ribbon. They have this at most craft stores, and it's really cheap. It's like less than $1. So many different colors. This one is kind of like a dark corally pink, and I thought it matched the colors of the roses there. So I just cut off a piece and just tied a simple bow. First, what we're going to do is glue the button to the bow that we've made. So let's see, I think this side looks better. Yeah, so you can use whatever glue you want, like a heavy duty glue. I'm just going to use some hot glue right now to make it go a little faster. So hopefully it's ready. Let's see. All right, got a thing of glue there, and I'm going to press it right onto my bow. Watch your fingers. I'm not getting any glue on mine. Okay, so there's that. So remember I mentioned that you can kind of cover up these folds a little bit. So I just kind of move the fabric back with my finger And then whichever side is going to be your main side. I decided the floral one would be the one that's going to be out mostly. Just push the fabric back a little with your finger, and then while it's pushed back, take your pin and just poke it into the top of your styrofoam heart. And then you can just move the tails where you want them to be. Mine ended up in the back. And there you go. How cute is that? So those are my 2 heart projects. Really nice and big, cost just a couple of bucks to make. And for me, I had everything in my stash except for the foam heart. So it was a good use of my materials. So those are the backs, which is, just like a nice softer kind of a pattern, I think. And then the focus pattern is on the front. So yeah, that's it for my project today. I hope you liked it. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be glad to help if I can. If I didn't explain anything or something clearly enough, let me know, and I'll be glad to help out. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and please give me a like and follow me or subscribe. I'm on Instagram as well, and I post a lot over there of my projects. So I will talk to you guys later. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day. Bye.